Want to welcome again Andrew Radar. He's the designer of Stellar Horizons 2, Galactic Frontier. If you watched our part 1, we did a lot of background discussions and introductions about Andrew and his approach. We talked about science fiction and technologies in general and exploration. Covered a lot of things, but we just got to the introduction of the game. So we want to go obviously further than that, and that is for the Stellar Horizons 2 game that's going to be starting on Kickstarter shortly from the time of this recording. So Andrew, now that we've covered sort of the high level introduction of the game, I do want to ask just a few more questions high level about the game. Could you share with us the number of players that can play Stellar Horizons 2? It is a standalone game, and always people ask, is it solitaire friendly as well?
Yeah, so it's 1 to 7 players, which means it is solitaire friendly, and it's so same as Stellar Horizons 1.
Okay.
7 was kind of a mystical number back then. It's the number of planets, or planets plus the moon and the sun that you could see for the ancients. So 7 is kind of the space number, mystical number, was the most important number in history. And so and it seems like a good number to cap it at. Also, you have to have a some kind of limit, but I made a deliberate attempt to make it's very solitaire friendly, very friendly for small groups as well. And there's also kind of a cooperative mode, which I'm really happy with, because in my group of friends and my family, we play a lot of cooperative games, because then, you're all working together and it feels good to be part of a team and stuff. So there's a cooperative mode also, which I'm really quite happy about. So
yeah, I saw you had some of the scenarios they called out that they were cooperative play mode. I think one was there was like a huge plague, galactic plague, or one had to survive, and you had to cooperate and try to survive it. So yeah, definitely a lot of different scenarios. What made you come up with the idea to limit it to 7 factions? And also, can you talk about, which we covered in part 1, you said these are coming from sort of the human species, these genetically altered, but they are all starting with humans in general, as the human race. So could you share with us how you came up with these 7 factions? And then I'll ask you a follow-up question after that.
Yeah, sure. So yes, we all start as humans in Stellar Horizons 2, and then your faction, you can kind of modify your species over time and adopt kind of different ways of building ships and that sort of thing. But these are all sort of different leaning into aspects of the game, different flavors that lean into aspects of the game. And so a lot of brainstorming about how the factions would look and how a particular group of humans would approach going into the galaxy, so going to different stars in the future. And so so this one, Praetorians, this is kind of based on the Romans. Actually, there was a great sci-fi book with kind of
it's based on the Romans. That's interesting. I didn't know it was based on the Romans. Okay.
Yeah. So it's kind of the military faction, but there's sort of 2 semi-military factions. This is kind of the quality over quantity, really kind of honor-based faction, where these guys have the biggest, baddest ships, and kind of pretty good technologically, but everything is very expensive and hard to do. And it kind of starts with like, you can imagine all these being extensions of various activities we're doing in space now, and so this is like space military kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's the way, but it's every faction is kind of independent, private, and so their advantages are all to do with ship design, extra fleet improvement cards, so they make their fleet better, and these guys have just the best ships.
Gotcha.
Basically.
So it's quantity over. So how would you say that the factions differ in the game? So with 7 different factions, what are the attributes that will be where one faction might have an advantage over another, or where do things change?
Yeah, we could maybe step through them quickly. I think that's a good way to do it. But so each one leads into a different aspect of the game and has advantages in different areas. And I think I tried to make even a slightly more flavorful version than Stellar Horizons 1, where they all are different. But here it's there's kind of always a delicate balance between making the factions too different versus making them kind of too similar, such that it all feels the same. And I think I kind of tried to balance that really well. And so the Praetorians, they'll find it harder to build up. They'll find it harder to expand because they're not really civilian focused, but they have the best ships, basically.
Gotcha.
The best but most expensive ships.
Right. And what's great is you've got 7 different ones. Now, when it comes to gameplay, let's say I've got 2 people, I can get, a 3-player game together. Is it you're just playing the one faction and there's 3 factions total in the game? Or is it that you can own, or not own, but you could play the role of 2 or more factions if you don't have 7 players and you want to do that?
Well, you certainly could like play two factions each, but typically you are playing a faction in the
Gotcha.
game.
Okay.
But there also is, like Stellar Horizons One, there's some elements of kind of game run NPC. So
Mhm.
you do have some interactions outside of the players, right? Just in case you're playing solo or a small group or something like that. It's yeah, you have some interaction with the game itself, game elements.
And then I thought I'd just bring up the player's guide, which you recommend players should start with. New players should start with the player's guide first. I just want to call this out because, again, this is not World in Flames in space. It's very great illustrations, but the page count's very low. It's it's to me, it's a low to moderate game in terms of complexity here. Based on again, this is the playbook, but it's very short. It's 12 pages.
Yeah, that's pretty much the whole legend on the back. Actually, we were just showing. Yeah, so that's just there's different types of worlds. So as I mentioned, there's arid and polar. So that's like Arctic kind of worlds, oceanic worlds, barren worlds, volcanic worlds, Earth-like moons, astrobelt. So you find different types of worlds as you go out and explore. The ships have kind of icons, and I think this is the main set of icons here. You have mining ships and research ships, and you have exploration and cargo capacity. Yeah, it's intended to be pretty simple compared, even with Stellar Horizons 1, it's pretty simple. One thing that is really interesting is trade. So you have different types of trade goods, and so you get this kind of alien art from a planet way out there, and you can bring it back to Earth and sell it on Earth at a premium, right? Or and depending on the type of planet, that's what those little PAK, polar arid or volcanic, I think it is. Those are the types of planets that would demand that, because if you go out to a polar arid or volcanic planet, they'll tend to need medicine because it's a really harsh environment, and so you can sell medicine for a premium there. So all the trade goods are flavored to the types of worlds.
Yep.
This is a fleet improvement card, so this makes you better at finding out what's on a planet. So you can choose two and then choose which one you want to have. So if you want to sort of have some impact in customizing the worlds that you find, this one's really good.
That's great. And like I said, I mean, this number of pages, again, only 12 pages for the player's guide and really well illustrated. I mean, it's really easy I was just scanning through it. It was very easy to follow as far as now this playbook is actually not going to be on the Kickstarter page. We do have the rules booklet is available on the, let me just pull that up for a second just to share with everybody. So let me do that here. So we do have the rules that are available or will be available during the Kickstarter. So I know you said read the player's guide first, but again, this is pretty short. I think it was around 20. I want to say it was 20 odd pages. It was, exactly 20 pages to the back cover. So again, the game system itself, obviously, it's not overly complex. So definitely could be played in a day or two, as you mentioned.
Exactly. Yeah, and this explains the scenarios as well. So it's intended to be quite simple, broken into phases. There's a lot more player aids as well. There's a whole player card that tells you exactly what you need to do, and it's like a cheat sheet for all the information on one page. And has all like the die roll numbers that you're looking for and stuff like that. I
like how you worked in the quotes for each scenario. Carl Sagan, James T. Kirk, Michael Crichton. It's great. It's fantastic. Really adds a nice flavor to exactly what the scenario is trying to recreate. It's awesome.
One there, Search and Destroy, is actually a reference to sci-fi. I don't know if you recognize that one.
Let's see, Roy Beatty. All those moments will be lost in time, like tears in the rain. I am not.
That's the last quote. That's the last line in Blade Runner, or one.
Okay. I've watched the movie. Shoot. Okay, I should have known that. Okay. Well, yeah, it's awesome. You've got a great variety in the scenarios here, and like you said, cooperative play, or it could be competitive play as well. But yeah, lots of scenarios. Lots of scenarios. I think I see 8 scenarios in at least one campaign game, or if not more than one. But was it 2 campaign games, or I think you said
it's one campaign, but you can modify it in various ways.
Okay,
so you can make it you can make it cooperative, or you can make it start at different times or end at different times, or you can make it no combat if you want to do that.
Okay, well I want to just drill down a little bit deeper into the system itself then, and I'll go. Let me go back to the actual cover we have, the back cover. This is just too big, so there we go. So that's the back cover of the game for everybody. But I want to get into a little more details about the game mechanics so we can let people know what to expect in the game. So could you share with everybody how exploration works in Stellar Horizons 2?
Yeah, so I'll start off by saying all the mechanics in the game are based on Stellar Horizons 1. So for anyone who is familiar with that system,
Yeah.
this should feel very similar and simpler.
Okay.
Those two
Got it.
things.
Yep.
So it just like the inspiration from World of Flames originally, just how you have a series of things you do in a turn. I think most games have this, a sequence of play. You kind of move first, and then you explore, and then you fight, and then you trade, and then you build, and then you're done. Right.
Got it.
And so it's pretty simple. You just walk through all these phases and decide what you want to do. And because you're going to different star systems,
Yep.
it takes a certain amount of time
Yep.
in turns to get there, and so you have these little markers that go down, and when they get to 0 you're there, and
Right.
you don't touch the ships that have markers on them that are moving. And this is kind of similar to Stellar Horizons 1, where there were boxes that you drop, and so you can just forget about all the ships that are in transit. That makes it pretty easy. So you just interact with ships that are there. When you explore, you're going to a new system that is not fully explored, very similar to Stellar Horizons 1, and you roll dice, and if you succeed, then you have a chance. Then you get some science automatically, and then you have a chance to permanently reduce the number. When you permanently reduce the exploration number, because once you've fully
Yeah.
explored a planet, you can't explore anymore. That otherwise
Right.
you could
Right.
just
Then it's
explore
done.
forever.
Yeah. You got everything discovered.
Right, right. When you deplete the number and find something, it's called you can find an anomaly, right? So you can find something really interesting there.
Hmm.
And you can a discovery, that I think is what it's called. Yeah. So you can find an anomaly. So something super interesting there. And as I mentioned, decapods is one of my favorites. There's a lot of these are,
Can that be used for trade? Can the discoveries be used for trade? I
Some
know
of
you do
them
have an
are
economic
actually, yeah.
or
Some of
trade.
them are. So there
Okay.
are like herbivores, or you can find predatory plants, or you can find
Interesting.
carnivores, or something like that. See, and some of them like rare alien artifacts, and some of them are like art, or some of them are like flora or fauna you can use.
Yep.
Some of them are medicines. So some of them are actually related to trade. Other of them are just permanent boosts to the system. So if you build a
Okay.
base there, you get permanent research. So you can have a temporary effect, and you can also have a permanent effect. So forever, for example, there's one like which is like stimulants, and all the workers there produce more forever if you build a base there, right?
Based on the stimulants.
Yeah,
There you
one
go.
of them is based on aliens, like xenomorphs and stuff, where
Okay.
if you try to build a base there, they slowly like kill off your base and stuff. So you
Oh
have to
boy, that
eradicate them.
sounds like
And
fun.
and this is actually a way. They're kind of like they're challenges. Some of
Okay.
them are exploration challenges, and some of them are combat challenges. And
Okay.
this is one of the ways I made the game system kind of more interactive. Even if you're playing single player, you may have to have like a combat fleet come to bombard the planet to destroy all the xenomorphs before we can
Okay.
settle there, right? Or
Okay.
something like that. Or you may have to kind of discover the cure for a pathogen before you can settle there. So there's a lot of interaction with the game system itself. And if you're playing with other players, you can either cooperate together to solve the challenge
Right.
together, and then you
I was
can
going to
both
say,
share the reward.
I want to sort of segue. Does technology help you with exploration? Like, are your technology capabilities going to actually help you when you do the exploration or the discovery on the planet, or just and maybe in general terms, could you share with everybody how technology plays a role in the game system?
Yeah, it's a tech tree similar to Stellar Horizons
Okay.
1, but kind of
Okay.
starting out at the point of Stellar Horizons 1 with very basic interstellar travel, and then progresses to almost kind of light speed travel. So there's physics, biology, and engineering, just like in Stellar Horizons 1. And yes, your ships get much better. They travel much faster, and so by the end of the game, you can kind of jump around from star to star. It still takes decades, but each decade is a turn. So
Yeah.
a turn
Yeah.
or
So it
two,
goes
right?
pretty fast. Yeah.
Pretty fast,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or you can increase the range of your ship so they can go further from Earth. Right at the start of the game, you're barely going to Alpha Centauri. You're just kind of squeaking along to Alpha Centauri in 50 years. At the end of the game, you're kind of jumping out really, really far in a turn or two. Yeah. And then you get much better at settling other worlds. So at the start of the game, you can only settle the very best worlds, like Class M worlds. If you happen to be lucky and find a Class M
Is that
world.
because of the technologies you need to advance?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, as your technology gets better, you get better at
Okay.
settling worlds, you grow
Okay.
faster, stuff like that. So you get better at settling worlds, and you also get better at transforming worlds. So you can terraform worlds.
Oh,
And
there you
any
go. Okay.
world except for a gas giant or asteroid belt could eventually be terraformed into an M-class planet, but it could take a long time, right?
Okay.
And so that's another reason for the kind of long scale of the game, and 10-year turns is, yeah, you in the game you actually transform planets, and so you can transform a desert planet into an ocean planet or an M-class planet or something like that. And it's in a progression, so you have to kind of go through a step. And there's something called marginal, which is kind of barely habitable, but it's better than barren, better than arid, so you can transform through this progression. Yeah, so you can terraform. In fact, one of the factions is completely based on terraforming, so they're really good at transforming planets.
Out of the 7, okay.
Out of the 7,
and then you said, as you mentioned, it's cooperative play in some aspects, but there is competitive aspects as well. So could you touch upon where does competition come into play, or combat in particular? How does that get introduced to the system?
Yeah, so there is certainly combat in the game, but in Stellar Horizons 1, I was sort of limited because the factions have to be basically nation states or groups of nations, right? And so what happens on Earth when Russia and China are at war, right? And so you have to answer that question, right? Here, because they're kind of theoretical future factions that had a little bit more creativity with, but still are plausible representations of humanity. I changed the way that diplomacy works, and so you don't have constant relations with anyone. Before there was like you have an alliance with someone, or you have or you're at war with them, or you're embargoing them, or something like that. And I changed it more into kind of a Wild West UN police system, maybe is the best way to describe
Wild West
it.
Sci-fi.
So anyone could do anyone to anything. Anyone could do anything to anyone, but there are incentives in place. And so you can absolutely do well attacking other factions, but there are consequences. And the consequences are basically that the person who is attacked gets a lot of sympathy and get a lot of help. I actually sort of designed the game right around during the Ukraine war, so I'm sort of basing it on that kind of situation.
Interesting. Okay.
Russia's attacking Ukraine, and the response is not that everyone attacks Russia; it's that everyone aids Ukraine, right? And so in the system where a player is attacked, they get help from everyone else. And so
that's interesting. So the Ukraine war actually had an influence on your design approach for the game.
Very much. When kind of the peak when I was developing the combat system was right as that was at its peak, just happening. And so and so it's effectively what happens is the person who's getting attacked gets help. The person who is attacking gets shunned and gets embargoed and traded and stuff like that, right? But they can also, because it has to be a plausible course to victory or a plausible thing to do, what happens is you pick escalation markers. If you attack someone or do something aggressive, or especially if you attack civilian things, so that you can do this on various levels, you draw escalation markers. And some of these are bad and some of these are good. And so you could get victory points from attacking people. You could get new technologies from attacking people. But you could also lose a bunch of money and trade and all this kind of stuff.
No guarantees. There's no guarantees it's going to be beneficial in the end, it sounds like.
Right. But over time, as you because you get to discard some of the bad ones. And so over time, you can kind of hone your policy.
So better probability of success for combat if you get rid of the bad ones then.
Exactly. And so over time, you can kind of make it pay in a sense. And again, both Stellar Horizons 1 and Stellar Horizons 2, I think the overall kind of view of the combat is it's kind of like the Age of Exploration, where you had wars in America or wars in India or wars in the South Pacific or something like that without necessarily triggering a war in Europe, right? And so it's kind of compartmentalized because it's so far from home.
Gotcha. Well, listen, this was fantastic. So again, this is about Stellar Horizons 2 Galactic Frontier. It's a standalone game, 1 to 7 players. I want to leave you with one last question, or at least I had one last question. Then I want to open it up to you for closing comments about the game. And that is, as you approach this game and your design, what is maybe the biggest challenge you faced during the design, or what you're most proud of about some aspect of this game? So just curious, what would be the highlight for your personal journey in doing Stellar Horizons 2? What do you think about when you look back at your time?
I kind of think of it as realistic Star Trek. And so this is what the future will look like. And it's a fun, interactive way with lots of ways to play with, one player or many players. And it's just kind of fun really getting into the factions and going exploring real stars. Like, for example, one near Earth is Wolf 359, which everyone has heard of from Star Trek. And it's a real star, but you can't see it in the sky. And it's kind of, and you go and get to explore new planets and get to change the planets and get to change your species and modify them into kind of like Dune-ish, where you become a desert species like the Fremen or something. And it's just, there's so much to it. It's kind of such a fun way to go out and interact with the galaxy.
So it makes me think of what you said in our part 1 discussion, that you're more from the hard science approach. So even though it's called science fiction, I think what you're saying is, no, this is all fairly realistic. This is all plausible from a hard science standpoint. It's not fiction in terms of fantasy, that it's just not just way out there. But this is all based on, how science technologies are evolving, things of that nature. So I don't know if science fiction is a misnomer, because I don't know if it's really fiction necessarily that much based on your approach to the game.
Yeah, I think it's the future, like how the future will actually be. That's the goal. Yeah.
Well, again, I want to remind everybody, again, the Kickstarter will be announced by Compass Games. It's an absolute pleasure to work with you, Andrew, on this second game. And again, Still Horizons won those awards. People are loving it. And this sounds like a more approachable standalone game. You simplified it, streamlined it, and got into some new areas. So I'm just going to leave you with any closing remarks that you'd like to share about Stellar Horizons 2 for those that are considering backing the game and maybe even picking up the add-on for the original Stellar Horizons in case they don't own it yet. So I'll turn final word over to you, Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of going out into the galaxy and finding out what's out there and interacting with it and following the future path of humanity into the future with technologies, with ship design, with modifying your species and trade and shipping goods and finding new art forms and just kind of interacting with the galaxy. And yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Andrew. I think we'll probably have this will probably be the part 2 or final part. I don't know if we'll split it up into a third part, but if we do that, we'll definitely let everybody know. We'll make the announcements when these interview segments become available. But thank you so much for your time and all your efforts on this game. I guess you've been working on it for the last at least 2 years, 3 years, maybe.
Yeah, pretty much. Right after Stellar Horizons 1, I think I sort of felt it was the logical next step. Like it was always there, okay, so now Stellar Horizons told a story, how we get from now to spanning the solar system, kind of like The Expanse. And Stellar Horizons 2 tells the story of us being Star Trek.
And I just realized people will probably kill me if I don't ask this last question I should have thought of earlier. Is there anything we can maybe expect for the future of the Stellar Horizons franchise? Since we've got 2.
Yeah, I have 2 things I'm interested in doing. One is Stellar Horizons 1 originally had ship design. I was hugely into Master of Orion and stuff, and I always wanted a game where you could design your own ships. In the end, because it was so complicated and still is, I ended up removing that feature because it was already too big a game, and now with that it just would have been bigger.
The World in Flames part is coming out in the end.
So. Exactly. Yeah. So I do have an intention to go back and reintroduce that in a simpler way, so you can design your own ships, and also kind of streamline the rules a little bit, and then I definitely think you could have a Stellar Horizons 3 because this goes to about, I think, 100 light years, something like that. So it's the near-term stars, it's 50 stars. It seems, it's going through the galaxy and exploring new stars and finding new planets, but, and just kind of right at the edge of finding the aliens, right? So you have alien signals, you have alien artifacts, you have maybe some alien technologies, and you certainly have alien, non-sentient aliens. You definitely have a lot of alien creatures and algae and stuff like that, and even xenomorphs potentially, right? But you don't really have a lot of sentient interaction with aliens. And I could definitely see going wider in the galaxy, even to the whole galaxy,
really
and having kind of a Stellar Horizons 3 where you're really modifying your species. You're maybe starting as non-humans and that sort of thing. So absolutely, there's a big galaxy out there to explore.
That sounds fantastic. Well, again, thank you so much. Again, just a reminder for everybody, this hopefully is live on Kickstarter at this time, or if you're watching this after the Kickstarter concludes, please consider picking up Stellar Horizons 2, as well as Stellar Horizons direct from Compass Games. And again, it was just a pleasure to speak with you today, and we look forward to the release of the game. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Sean.
Take care. Bye-bye.